I got into online entrepreneurship by a number of measures. I became good at it, and then I became passionate about it. Now I love it, but it wasn't because I was following my passion. If you put in the work and you become good at something, it becomes your passion. And I think that's a lot more sustainable in the long term than trying to follow your passion.
Today we get to speak with Raymond Blakney. He's an award winning Filipino American entrepreneur who has over a decade of experience building, bootstrapping, and operating 67-figure remote businesses. He has been featured along with his businesses in magazines such as Entrepreneur, Forbes, the Boston Globe, and other top publications. He even used to own a chocolate factory in the Philippines. So let's learn more about Raymond in this fun conversation. Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life. Want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. Hey Ray, how are you doing? Thank you so much for coming out to the podcast.
Hey, Janae, it's my pleasure to be here.
Awesome, dude. So I met Ray through the SPI Pro group, I guess you call it.
Community, I think is the word they're using.
Community, right?
Yeah.
So what's funny is that I this was a couple of months ago, and I met him through the new member meetup where there's like 48 people jumped on the Zoom call, and we were in one of the breakout rooms and we got to talk and communicate. And I was like, I reached out to all of the folks that I had met there, and I was like, hey, I would like to bring you on to the podcast and talk about it. And what's funny is that we pay to be part of this SPI group, and run by the team by and our awesome leader. I don't know if I want to call him that, but good old Pat Flynn, right? So he's been an amazing, huge inspiration. He's such a kind guy. So this community, I've been there like a couple of times. I need to spend. I'm part of so many communities, and there's so little time in the day, and also having a full-time job. It's not easy to juggle all of these things. So hopefully someday I'll schedule time out and be like, all right, I'm gonna spend one day here, one day in this community, one in this community, spread it out a little better. And it was Ray. It was really awesome, learning about you and all the many things that you're doing. So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started.
Yeah, it's a kind of convoluted story. We were talking before we got online that if we had to put one job description on our business card, you and I would both be stuck because there's no real way of covering it all.
Yeah.
Um, Little backstory is, let's see, I was born in the Philippines, grew up in Turkey. My dad's from the US, so I went to college in the United States, and now I live in Mexico. My wife is Mexican. My training was in computer engineering. So I went to college for that. I did my what I like to call my tour of duty out in
Mm-hmm.
Silicon Valley, because nobody lasts very long out there. I mean, you work like 80 hours a week and all the rest of it. It was
Yeah.
great in my early 20s. I wouldn't want to be doing it again now. And then I went on to work for a little more stable companies, Fortune 500. This was back in the first bubble bursting, 2003 or four, I think, was when
Mm-hmm.
the tech bubble first burst, and
Yeah.
that's why everybody wanted stable jobs. So I got a Fortune 500 company. Afterwards, I was kind of working in an office, and I'm like, there's got to be more to life than this, right? I mean, kind of going to this cube every single day and, um, you know, just producing stuff that I'm not very passionate about. And I apologize for the dog barking in the
You're fine.
background. This is COVID.
It's
Everybody's working
COVID.
from home, right? So
Yes.
yeah, we all have that. Um, so I was sitting there and I needed something different. So I quit my job. It was, close to a six-figure programming job. And I joined the US Peace Corps. So I just quit it. They paid me $150 a month to go to southern Mexico to help out in the indigenous communities in southern Mexico.
Wow.
That's where I met my wife. She wasn't part of the community. She was actually one of the Peace Corps staff, one of the Spanish teachers that they hired to teach us all about the culture and all the rest of it. And afterwards, I finished my 2 years. I was flat broke. And we decided, hey, this is a great time to start a business. I mean, why not, right? So that's how I got into entrepreneurship. My wife and I started our first two businesses together. The first one being what ended up being a chain of brick and mortar schools in Mexico. We sold those in 2012. And right now we work together in one of my businesses. I'm in multiple. She focuses on this one, called livelingua.com. It's one of the top online language schools in the world. And we like to brag that we're the only one of the top 5 that has no venture capital money. We are bootstrap mom and pop operation going against, $20 million VC venture capitalists in that
Wow.
space.
That is amazing. I remember you mentioning something like that in the intro call, and wow, that's beautiful. I mean, and when you said, you're flat broken, what other time is it to build your own business? And yes, the only way up is the only way to go, right? You're doing
Pretty much.
something more than nothing.
Well, there's actually, I'll put a little caveat in there for us at least. We always thought, because I was in my, 28, 29 at the time.
Hmm.
And the worst case scenario for us is, luckily we get along great with our parents. I'm a computer engineer. She's a bilingual certified teacher. Worst case scenario, it wouldn't work and we'd get jobs. And
Yeah.
we'd probably be making 6 figures between both of us. So we looked at it and really? That's the worst thing that'll happen, is that our parents will take us in for a month or 2 while we get back up on our feet, and then we do fine. I mean, so
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
risk was a little mitigated by that.
Well, that's really beautiful, because having that opportunity, it really opens your eyes, opens your doors, and it makes you appreciate all of the time that we have to be able to work on what we're really passionate about. And I've been, I didn't really go to school. I didn't finish school, but I got into something that I love to do, like building computers and building websites. So I was always building something, and then that enabled me to get into design and graphic design and user experience, because that was something that I was passionate about. But over time, what happens is that you start to lose a little bit of yourself, or a little bit passion around it. Of course, technology is changing continuously. There's new stuff coming out. Apple's got new uh, operating system, and Google's got new operating system. There's new design guidelines. There's new stuff always on the horizon. So it kind of keeps you fresh. But then the one thing that you miss out on is the community aspect of it. Sure, I could go be I could have been going to UX communities and those communities, but I was like, there's got to be something different out there. And I was always drawn to something like this, where meeting people, new people out of nowhere, where there's a sense of belonging, there's a sense of camaraderie.
Hmm.
And I think the entrepreneur bubble, the entrepreneur community is exactly what that is.
Well, that's exactly, especially the online community, and not necessarily that everybody's business is online, but that just we're kind of in the similar space,
Yeah.
kind of brings that all together. A lot of the communities I'm very active in, and I even speak at conferences and stuff in these communities, is what they call the digital entrepreneurs, those who travel
Mm.
the world and also start, significant businesses while doing it.
Yeah.
Because I find, at least for me, these kind of people, that I have a lot of the same interests as they do. I mean,
Yeah.
and I can meet them anywhere. I mean, I recently, this was right before COVID, spoke at a conference in Thailand, and now one of the guys that I met there is coming here to Mexico is living here in the town Mexico, because he's just kind of holding out while the storm's, passing. So he's like, hey, come to Mexico. So
Yeah.
these kind of communities, we stay in touch online, but we see each other all over the world. There are people I've seen in Europe, Asia, South America, and totally separate places, but I see the same people from that community, and I really like that.
Yeah. It's really powerful. And with COVID, what's happened is that you're able to spend more time online and find these communities.
Hmm.
Because we're home, we've saved 2 hours, or 2 to 10 hours out of our weeks from commuting.
Hmm.
We don't have to worry about thinking about going somewhere to eat, because everybody's staying home, eating at home. So we've kind of saved a lot of time, and to fill that human connection gap, we found these Zoom communities. Like, I was just reading an article today where Zoom stock price since last year, like September 9, 2019, the stock price was $75. Today it actually just last month it was over $450.
Makes us all wish we had bought something other than mutual funds and just bought, bought Zoom stock. But come on, that's like winning the lottery. Like, if you can
It
guess that
is.
kind of stuff,
It
you're Warren
is.
Buffett. I mean, for the most part, right? So
That's true.
yeah, yeah.
And so it's really amazing to see where technology has gone, and we are so dependent on this technology. In fact, we're using Zoom right now to record this conversation.
My entire business is built on this technology. Live Lingua is online one-on-one language lessons that we
Oh
do over
wow.
Skype and Zoom. I've been doing, using this technology for years. Without this, I would not have my biggest business right now.
Wow, that is so powerful.
Hmm.
So there you go, man. Technology is something that we are heavily reliant on. And as digital entrepreneurs, it's more and more apparent on what you need for your business to run.
Hmm.
All right,
But it
so
opens up opportunities too, right, for
it
everybody,
does.
because it used to be that you'd have to have pass some gatekeepers to start your business, right? Register it, have money, rent a building, all the rest of it.
Yeah,
Now you need $60 to get a hosting at like Bluehost and put WordPress on there and buy a $15 theme, and you're good to go. You have a business. I mean,
that's right.
for $100 you can launch a business easily these days.
Yeah. The hardest part, the hardest part is figuring out what that business is going to be,
Hmm.
why you're even doing it, right? That why question, it always comes up in these community calls like, what is my why? What is my reason to exist? What content do I create? Like all of that is like more harder than starting a business online.
Agreed. One of the things that, at least from my experience, when looking for the why, none of my businesses are my why. My businesses help me reach my why, right? So
Yes.
it's not that one of the things I like to say is whenever somebody says, hey, follow your passion, I say, don't do that. Your passion, if you do that, that will not be your passion for very long. What I do believe in, though, is building your passion. I was not passionate. I didn't become an online entrepreneur because I was passionate about online entrepreneurship.
Right.
I got into online entrepreneurship by a number of measures. I became good at it. And then I became passionate about it. Now I love it. But it wasn't because I was following my passion. If you
Yeah.
put in the work and you become good at something, it becomes your passion. And I think that's a lot more sustainable in the long term than trying to follow your passion. Hey, I like, this. And so I'm going to do it professionally. I've
Yeah.
never heard of that really working for many people.
No, you're absolutely right. And as human beings, we grow, right? We're constantly growing. We're constantly overcoming and the struggles that we first face. Like for example, sure it's harder to start something, but once you've started, like okay, the challenge is over. I need a new challenge. So we need new challenges all the time. So we got to have a ladder or some kind of step building to rise up essentially, right? So as entrepreneurship, we are always seeing those challenges. And if you and there's I guess there's no tried and true plan. Like everybody faces a
I was about to
different
say,
struggle.
plenty of people selling tried and true plans online, but I guarantee
Yes.
to you, the only tried and true plan is selling tried and true plans online. If that makes sense. I
You're
mean, like,
so right.
that's just like there's. You ask them, have you ever built a seven-figure business? No,
Nope, but I
I
saw
did.
one.
It's this business on how to sell seven-figure build business. That's the only one I've ever built. So
Oh
no,
my
no,
god,
no.
that is
I've done it. It took me 10 years to build my first seven-figure business.
yeah,
I built a few mid to high six figures after that, but it was and it was a little quicker, but it was because of what I learned to build that seven-figure business. So I joke
exactly.
with people, it's like, why don't you write a book? And I'm like, my book would be how to build a seven-figure business in a decade, and nobody would buy it because nobody wants that. They want the
No,
30-day
they
quick
want the
fix,
30-day
right?
version.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
that's at least not been my experience on how building businesses work, unless you're already rich, in which case it's probably easier. I wouldn't
It's
know.
probably easier. But even then, it's probably easier to spend the money or hire somebody who
Well,
can
that's what you
help
do,
you get
right?
to that. That's
Exactly,
what you do. That's
exactly.
what you
But
do.
my expertise, at least, is in the bootstrapping side. So if somebody gave me $1 million to start a business, I probably wouldn't even know what to do with it. I'd
Like,
be like, I don't know what to do. This is
what do I
not the
do with
way
it?
I've built businesses in the past. So
Exactly.
I'm like, yeah, just buy a house, I guess. I mean, yeah,
That's a
whatever.
really good point. That's a really good point. And I think that's one of the reasons why companies that look for VCs, they're like, okay, we've done this part. Somebody come and help, give us some more money so we can put some more engine behind it.
Hmm.
And then it kind of really doesn't work. Oh, you need to do hire more sales. And I've had some experience, not experience like directly, but I worked for this one company, almost 10 years ago. And when I first joined, there was like 170 people. And then they brought in a new CEO and they basically ramped up the entire sales team, gone from 10 salespeople to 400. And within 6 months, That company was publicly traded, and then they filed bankruptcy, or they started like diluting the stock. I don't know what they were playing with. Like they basically had to let go of 70% of the people. So I
Yeah,
was
but
like,
the people, the owners were rich. They didn't care at that point. So that's kind of what the model works behind. I mean, look at it. Like Twitter's never made money. I think Airbnb loses money. I mean, all these big companies
everybody,
that we're looking at, they're just losing money. They are not
yeah,
making money. They're playing the system.
they're playing the
Um,
system exactly.
when you're building a small business, even if it goes up to like 7 figures like ours, it's still, we need to make money. I mean, we have, I'm not going to go and take $1 million loan off and pretend I'm a big company for the
Yeah,
next 6 months or something like that. And then say,
yeah,
oh, go back. I'm going to go bankrupt because I don't make enough money to pay back a $1 million loan in two
yeah.
years or whatever it is.
You got to
So
build up. You got to build up that revenue to match your expenses, and then eventually overcome those expenses.
that's it. Well, that's what, and that takes the initial hustle, which is where a lot of people burn out because when you're
Yeah,
launching a business, so I've launched multiple businesses and I always use my same methodology because I like the hustle part. I really like when it's just like me and one person kind of just grinding. For example, right now I'm working on building a SaaS product called
hmm,
Podcast Talk. And I'm writing most of the basic code and I'm just about to hire one programmer next week. That's it. That's all that's going to be by the time we launch is me and one programmer because there's a
yeah,
little bit of grunt programming work that I just don't have time to do when I'm managing my other businesses.
yeah,
This is my favorite part of running a business. Once it gets successful, I kind of lose interest. Successful being like about $500,000 in revenue.
yeah.
I usually hire somebody at that point to do it. You have to know your strengths and weaknesses. And
Agreed.
day-to-day operations, my respect to the people who can do that, the ones
Yeah,
who kind of execute every day really well. That's not my skill set. Honestly, I'm like, I'll get you there. I'll build the system. I just need somebody else to check the system to make sure it's working and then make those
yeah.
fine little tweaks in there to, take us to the next level. If that's not my skill set.
You like the building part. You like assembling.
That's
Like
it.
for example, I spent 2 weeks, 3 weeks building this GT3 Lego Porsche model. Right. Once it's built, right, you've
Behind
got
me, there's a model that has about 2,000 pieces that I put together. That it's a Japanese, what they call Gundam. It's a
yeah, that's
Japanese
beautiful.
robot, and yeah, it
Yeah,
took to about 2,000 pieces plus then the stickers and the painting and everything that goes on
and
it.
now
I
it's just
love that
sitting
kind of thing.
there.
Yeah,
Like, all right,
I
somebody else
love
go
that's
play
it.
with
Yeah,
this.
exactly. I have no interest in playing with it. I have another box sitting in there. Normally, before I had my son, I'd spend the weekend. I'd spend a few hours every weekend doing it.
Yeah,
I haven't
exactly.
been able to in the last few months, but hopefully that'll come back.
Yeah, so I absolutely love building, putting,
Hmm.
figuring out all those intricacies. Okay, like, okay, how can I, like, you're using your analytical and your creative mind together,
Hmm.
and like, oh, how's this gonna come together? Let me put this together. Okay, it's done. Cool. What's the next project?
That's it. That's it. Well, for up to a point at least, I do have the follow through right to get it up there because to me
Right,
like done is not until people are paying at
right,
least 100
exactly.
customers are paying me for it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's still some tinkering to do, but you're right. Every business gets to a point where all you have to do, like LiveLing was there right now. I have I have a COO. My wife takes care of the academic side of things. She's the chief academic officer. I kind of have board meetings equivalent. I have like a 1 hour meeting every week, but I
yeah,
don't get too involved in LiveLing day-to-day operations anymore because we've been doing it now for 10 years. I mean, there's not every once in a while we pivot and there's a little we just launched a new website,
hmm,
worked with a new UI UX company, right? Because the
yeah.
first version of Live Lingual was me buying a theme for $25 on ThemeForest. I mean, it worked, but it wasn't
Yeah,
the greatest looking thing in the world. So the UI UX company came in. I was more involved in the business at that point. So when we're creative, we have to kind of get all that stuff working. Pages up after a few false starts, server transfers. Woo, there was a few nights I didn't sleep in there. But now it's running again. People are running it. I'm focusing on other projects, right? I mean, so many
yeah,
other
yeah.
businesses that I'm working on, and I'm really excited about it. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I go to bed thinking about what I'm going to do the next day, and I wake up in the morning, can't wait to get in front and start working on it.
That's the best feeling, right? And dare I say it, is that the American dream, right? To be
It
able to
is,
work
but
on
most people
something.
don't. Well, I mean, this goes back to what we started this whole conversation about, the
Exactly.
why.
Yes.
My why is actually pretty simple,
Hmm.
even though it doesn't. A lot of people have much more high-minded whys than me. When I grew up in Turkey. How would I put it? My family was probably middle class,
Hmm.
but the company they worked for sent me to a private school. So I was the poorest kid in a rich school, right? So
Yeah.
I always felt poor growing up. That's why I'm trying to phrase it. I mean, I'm not going to claim that I grew up on the streets.
Yeah.
We had a comfortable house. We never ran out of food. But ever since, my biggest worry has always been money. Not that I want it. I don't want a fancy house. I don't want fancy cars, all that kind of stuff. But my
Yeah.
why is creating enough income streams that even if one of them dies, because I've lost businesses overnight before, if one of them dies, that income comes in. So that's why I try a lot of different businesses. I failed plenty of businesses. I mean, and even some of them, when you succeed, they don't take you to where you want to go. The chocolate factory I owned in Asia,
Yeah.
I sold my stock shares in it after running it for about 3 years because it wasn't generating enough income to make it worth the time. It was generating a few $1,000s a month.
Yeah.
Great for somebody who lives in Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
Not that great for somebody who's making, in the United States. So
Yeah.
I sold my shares to my partner. So really it's remembering the why, and then kind of everything you do should be for that. And mine is, I just don't want to worry about money anymore. Again, I wish I was some kind of more high-minded than that, but it was simply the stress, the biggest stress in my life kind of thing, right?
That is a very beautiful and very solid, and the why should be super simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to worry about money, so then my kids don't have to worry about it when they're growing up. We have enough to pay for the expensive, a roof for our house. That's all anybody needs. That gives us time freedom back.
That's exactly it. The end result is the freedom. Is the freedom from stress.
Yes.
And my wife and I, again, before we had a child, and we're going to do it again once COVID's over, and he's about 3, we would travel 3 months every year. So,
Nice.
Because we work online, we just took our computers, and people would ask, are you going on vacation? I'm like, kinda. Because let's say we went to Japan, our last big trip was to Japan last year. We spent 6 weeks in Japan, and we woke up in the morning, we checked the emails, maybe had some meetings, maybe got some work done, and we get up, have lunch outside, and then go to a temple that we saw on TripAdvisor in the afternoon. If you ask me, was that day a work day or a vacation day? I'm like, I don't know. Yes. I mean, we did both while we were there. So that's the kind of life we're looking to build ourselves.
Yeah.
I work much more now than I ever did when I was in corporate America.
No, I totally get it.
I love it. I mean, I love most of it. Let's be honest. It's almost 20% of your job that you're like, oh, taxes. I got to file my taxes again this year or something that nobody likes. But the rest of it, I really love what I do.
No, I think that is very powerful. And in one scenario or another, that's something that I'm looking to build to, like have a sustainable, not just a sustainable revenue income, or have multiple revenues of income that gives me the time freedom bank so I can go out and spend time with my kids, right? They're not going to be 5 years old, 3 years old for a long time. They're going to grow up and they're going to be like, oh, dad's always working.
Right? I was playing with my son right before getting on this call with you, and it's, in local time, it's 3:00 in the afternoon, right? I mean, it's middle of the workday. Most people nowadays with COVID, most people might wish they didn't have to play with their kids in the middle of the day. But it is a privilege, especially when my son's so young. I mean,
it is, yeah.
I was here when he crawled the first time, when he stood up. Unfortunately, I'm here when he's teething too, which is slightly not quite as much fun as that sounds.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, his first teeth came out 2 days ago, so we're right in the middle of it right now.
Yep, and he's got those ear pains and crying. Yep.
Yeah, he's been yelling. In fact, my wife has him out. We have a garden. He's in the walking him around the garden right now, so you guys don't hear yelling in the background of our podcast. But I wouldn't trade this for anything, right? I mean, I can take tomorrow off if I want to, make up the time on Saturday or not. I mean, it kind of depends on what I want to do, right?
That's beautiful. That's absolutely beautiful. Well, so you've told us a little bit of your journey, where you started, how you got started, what inspired you, what keeps you motivated, and all the things that you love to create on a daily basis. I think the more I have interviewed people, the more I talk to people, the more clarity I gain on why I'm doing the podcast. Is to create connections like this. I think I've mentioned this many times on the podcast. Like, this is my favorite thing to do. Like, all the publishing and all the editing, that's fun too. I mean, I love doing that when I was first starting, but I was like, I want that time back. I just want to be talking to people all day long, learning about what they are passionate about, learning about how they overcame a certain struggle. Like, I'm still trying to overcome the struggle of emailing my list, right? Like, what do I say to people? Like, what would they stick around? Would they reply back? And I'm sure they will. I mean, I don't know, right? I sent one email out like last year, and I was like, oh, I got like no response. Like, why am I not doing it? So I do have a full-time job, so that's also, that's also another reason why I'm not able to spend as much time thinking about all of this stuff. And then having three kids is not easy, especially in
We
COVID
have
times.
one. I'm like, in my
Right.
respects, and we live in Mexico, so we have a night nurse, a nanny, and a cook. I mean, and it's still a lot of work to have a kid.
Oh
So,
my
and my
God.
mother-in-law's living with us during COVID,
Oh
so
my
she's even
God.
helping us out. So yeah,
Yeah, so my youngest is 2.5, and right now she is like, I want to be in front of a computer like my two brothers because they're going to school. They just started school yesterday, and they're in front of a computer like 3 to 4 hours, with few breaks in the middle. So she's like, I want some of that too. So we're like, okay, let's figure out what we can do for you. And she's very, yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I get some knocks on the door and questions, and I'm like, I'm still trying to get my tasks done because if being an ADHD, like somebody who gets distracted very easily, it's very hard for me to get into zone and somebody comes knocking on the door. So I'm trying to get like I get up early at 5 a.m. Like, okay, I've got some peace time. I can spend some time on this work. But it's a ton of fun. Absolutely.
couldn't agree more. I mean, we wouldn't trade it for the world. Um, yeah, and the goal is like your goal is to have the ability to work from home, not have a full-time job, or your full-time job is your choosing, which is a little
Yes,
different. And we've been lucky that
absolutely.
I've been doing that for about 13 years now, and yeah, I mean, I can't imagine going back to an office.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So give me a minute. Hold on.
Mhm.
There's a better way to do a transition. Like, I'll be right back. I got my son knocking at the door.
I heard him
Uh,
talk. He calls you
yeah.
Baba, which where are you from originally, if you don't mind
I'm
me
from
asking?
Pakistan.
Okay, because when I grew up in Turkey, Baba is also the Turkish word for dad.
Yep,
That's
Baba
why I was
and
like, yeah.
in Arabic and Turkish and in Saudi, Pakistan. It's very similar word.
That's
But
that's why I'm like I understood. I'm like, yeah, I know what that means. So yeah, take care of what you need to do.
all right, be right back. All right, we're back. Thank you for waiting.
Commercial
So
break. Yeah,
gotta have a commercial break, right?
there you go.
So yes, to have the freedom to work on the projects that we want at home of our choosing, I think that's a powerful thing to be able to do. And for the past 12 to 13 weeks, I've been involved in a mastermind group where he's it's like you got to get your yellow time on your calendar, which is your time, right? And you got to have a team in place so they can do the work. They can support you as an entrepreneur. And that's what really is. That's what being entrepreneur really is having a team that supports you, being able to work 100
That's
hours
it.
a day, right?
Well, I mean, the example. Let's go back to Live Lingua. We teach thousands of hours of class every day. When we started Live Lingua, it was me
Yeah.
made the website. I answered the emails, and my wife was the Spanish teacher.
Yeah.
There's no way my wife would be teaching 1,000 hours of Spanish every single day. I mean,
Impossible. Yeah.
impossible. But we have a team now. We have about 150 staff and teachers around the world that teach this. And, that's the only way we're able to kind of reach this volume. Again, compared to Amazon, they sell more products per millisecond than we give in classes.
Yeah.
But we're not looking to be Amazon. I mean, there's a reason why I don't have the exact numbers, like 50% of Fortune 500 CEOs are divorced, right? Because in order to run and manage a business of that size, you have to sacrifice a lot.
Yeah.
And those are things I'm not willing to sacrifice. I'm not willing to
Exactly.
sacrifice my family. I don't think I'd be that much happier with a $50 million business than I am with a $2 or $3 million business. I
Yeah.
mean, that's more than I would ever need to live, right?
Exactly.
So you have to know yourself, because I think part of our culture in the United States is more, 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 more. Oh, I have, and I've fallen into that trap as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. We
I'd
all
be
do.
great when I could make $1,000 a month off this business. How about 2,000? 10, and I'll be totally happy. And like you make 10,000, like 20,000 sounds kind
Yeah.
of good. And then you keep going up, and there's never an end, right? Where you're like, even if you're not spending it, it's just like now this month, because
It's a
that's what
human
I've been
nature.
trained to think,
Yeah.
that I need more, more, and more. When really I'm like, huh, we
Yeah.
own our house, we have no car payments. I mean, I have no mortgage, no rent, no car payment. How much
Hmm.
money do I really need to survive every month? Probably not too much.
Not
So
not
yeah.
much.
So
No, that's so true because it's that it's in human nature to want more, right? To
mhm.
want more. If you were given, I think there's a saying that if you were given a mountain of gold in one hand, you'd ask, "Hey, can I have another one?"
Of course,
Right?
because you're never happy with what you
Never
have.
happy.
Luckily, a lot of, there are a lot of not courses, but you can read books about self-realization these days.
Yes.
Um, how far down you go down that rabbit hole varies by person, right? I'm an engineer,
Yes.
so I mean I understand the concept, but you can get a little too far into that world.
Yeah.
Um, but I do understand the general. I agree with the general principle of it,
Yeah.
right? Where it's not stuff. I mean,
It's
an
not stuff.
example I give is one thing we splurged on a trip was my wife and I. She bought it for my birthday. She rented a Ferrari for the day, and I drove it around Tuscany, like on
Yeah.
like a private tour. I felt so awkward doing that. I mean, it was kind of cool, but in the same way, it's like I can't imagine this being normal. I remember it was a convertible, so we kind of pulled back into Florence at the end of the tour,
Hmm.
and I kind of pulled up to an intersection, and some guy was walking around asking for money. And I was sitting there in a Ferrari, and literally, I had no money on me. I mean, it's not my car. But he kind of comes up, and I was like, "Sorry, no cash." And he just kind of gave me this evil look, like,
Like, what are you talking
"What are you
about? What
talking
kind
about?
of
You're
car are
driving
you
a
driving?
Ferrari. How can you have no cash on you?" I'm like, honestly, this is just. I drive a Hyundai back
Yeah.
home. I mean, this
Yeah.
is not my normal car. So yeah, I can't. I don't want that to be my life. Like kind of yachts and Ferraris and all the rest of it. I
Yeah.
don't think it would make me
Yeah.
happy at all.
That's beautiful because I think another thing my son was asking is like because being Muslim and learning about the Prophet's life and all that, he's like they were always so poor all the time. The Prophet, like, why? It's like and he's like the reason is like they would always give away the food. And I was like, there's a huge reason behind it. Because on the day of judgment, you're going to be asked for every single penny you've earned, every single splurge that you did. You got to pay, you got to answer for all of those things. So you've got to be able to be content with your life with what you have and look at the people who don't have much instead of looking at people who have the mansions and
And our
the
culture
amazing
is
things.
not built for that. I mean,
It is
they don't
not.
make TV shows about the regular people. They make
No,
TV
they
shows about
don't.
the rich who do ridiculous and awful things on TV. And I mean, I'll tell you, as I mentioned, I quit, close to a six-figure job in the
Yeah.
United States to volunteer for $150 a month in southern Mexico for 2 years. Those were the two best years of my life.
Yeah.
My wife and I volunteer to school for the deaf for 1 week every year. We go out there, they put us in their lodging.
Yeah.
That's one of the best weeks every year, more than us going to a vacation home or stuff like that.
Because
Are those weeks, and we're looking forward to taking our son to do those kind of things too, because we want to teach him that aspect of it. Even if we do get lucky enough that we make a lot of money, our son's never going to know. He's
yeah.
not going to have any clue that we're doing it. It'll be the bank, we're that most, and we'll pay for his college. But I'm like, if he wants a car when he's 15, I'm like, sure, here's the
Hmm.
classified ads.
Yeah.
Go and look for a job.
Yeah.
Go and buy your car. I'm like,
Yeah.
but I'm not giving you money for it. I'm like, I'm
Exactly.
definitely
You
not
gotta
going to do
earn it.
that. So exactly.
I think the other reason why that was the most exciting time for your life is because you realize how much luxury we come from,
Mhm.
right? How many blessings we have, right? To be living and living in this world, living in this state, living in this country. I think it is a huge luxury. And so we need to be thankful and grateful and compassionate of what we have. And when you are going out there and giving of your time to help these people who are in need, it just fills your heart because you are doing physically something that is providing for that. And I think that's the entire reason we are put on this earth, to help
Agreed.
one another.
Agreed. And one of the things, I think it's Ernest Hemingway who said it, and I'm going to totally massacre the quote, but it was something about, nothing kills prejudice and ignorance like travel. I'm paraphrasing a lot, but the idea is, if you live in, Western Europe or the United States, even if you come from a quote unquote poor family in the Western Europe, United States, you have no
Yeah.
idea. Um, go to the Philippines, where where half of my family's from.
Mm-hmm.
My wife went there. My wife is Mexican, and she grew up kind of upper lower class, which means she grew up in a small town,
Mm-hmm.
but her parents were well-to-do by the small town. But by any other standards, they were pretty poor. So her standards weren't super high. She went to the Philippines for the first time, I think 7 or 8 years ago, when we opened
Yeah.
our chocolate factory. And we were driving in Cebu from the airport to my aunt's house.
Mm-hmm.
My family there is kind of middle class. They have college educations, but they're not wealthy by any stretch of the imagination. But to get anywhere, you have to drive by this like slum, which was built on top of a trash heap.
Mm-hmm.
And she saw babies that were naked, just running around in the trash and playing all day. She was crying by the time she got to my aunt's house. She realizes like, wow. I mean, she'd seen it on TV and, but that's not the same of actually seeing it in real life.
Yeah.
And then we came back to Mexico and all of her aunts and uncles are complaining, oh, how poor we are in Mexico. And I remember we didn't say anything, but I'm like, Mexico's part of the G20. So by definition, it's one of the 20 richest countries in the world.
Yeah.
You guys have no idea. I've never seen anything in Mexico.
Yeah.
There might be like a certain section in Mexico City, but in general, that kind of poverty doesn't exist in Mexico. It doesn't exist in the United States.
Yeah,
you guys want to see poverty? You're from Pakistan as well. I mean, there are parts of Pakistan which even the poorest, the person there would be happy to live in the poorest part of the United States compared to where they're living over there. They would trade in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
So travel really opens that up to you once you kind of get out of your little bubble and you see the rest of the world.
That's so beautifully put, man. Thanks so much for reminding, and thanks so much for bringing that up, because I've seen. I mean, I keep going back to being grateful for what we have, and it just boils my blood when I hear my kids complaining and whining, like, "Oh, you guys have no idea what you're not missing."
That's it.
So I think I'm gonna introduce that idea, because my wife's been saying, we got to go back and go for Hajj, go for Umrah back in Saudi Arabia. I mean, that's another rich country, but I think going to like Thailand and Philippines and these other countries, I think it totally changes your perspective.
Go to the Philippines. Thailand I was there in October. I was actually surprised at how developed it was.
Oh, wow.
That wasn't as poor a country as I expected it to be. I expected Philippine level. It's actually a lot more Mexico level. The GDP is about the same.
Wow. Okay.
Their train system's much better than what we have in Boston. I'll tell you that. I mean, their railway system was much better than anything I've seen.
Yeah, they gotta have it, right? They gotta have that public transportation.
Well, that's it. But I mean, everything was on time. Everybody was respectful, waited in lines. I was very, very impressed.
Nice. Cool, man. Well, that was really awesome, talking about the fragility and the existence of life that we have, the time that we have on this earth, and what we can do to make this world a better place, and how we're doing it with all the different things that we do, and how we can be grateful. We are constantly looking at ways to help others. There's a relief foundation that we're working with, as part of a team of cyclists. We do fundraisers all the time to help. There's a program where they're raising funds for misplaced women, misplaced families that that have gone through I guess domestic abuse, and transitioning families. So we're always looking to give and looking to see how we can help others any way we can.
Likewise, Live Lingua, we sponsor children through Save the Children. So for every 100 new students we get, we're able to bring on another child. Our goal is to be able to sponsor at least 100 children around the world through the Save the Children program. My wife and I personally, as we mentioned, we volunteered, and we actually sponsor 2 kids, sponsor their education to School for the Deaf here in Mexico. So yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from. It's very important to us as well. Again, I want to have money so I don't worry about it, but I'm not going to do it. Our goal, actually, our dream is to start a charity. Once we get enough money that it's just not a thing anymore, we'd like to, start the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on a microscopic scale compared to them, but at least do something, something to do with teaching online entrepreneurship in countries like Pakistan, the Philippines, where it can change. Making $100, $200 a month online is the difference between poverty and middle class.
It is. In fact, my VA, who will be probably going through this episode, she's from Philippines, and she's a very hard worker. She's always willing to learn new stuff. She's just such an amazing resource to have to get a lending hand.
So I'll say salamat po to your VA, which is thank you in Tagalog. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, so at this junction of our episode, we like to ask some quick questions to tie it all back to hacks and hobbies.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. What is one hobby that you wish you got into?
That I wish you have gotten to that I haven't gotten into?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good question. Let me think. Generally, if I want to do something, I kind of do it. So that's why I'm just like, what haven't I done? Okay, one thing that I'd like to get into, or at least try,
Mhm.
is paragliding with the
Ooh.
motors on the back. I have a
Mhm.
friend in Japan who does that, and he keeps putting his photos on Facebook. And I'm like, I have a fear of heights, but that looks amazing. I would love to be able to do that.
Nice. That sounds really awesome. A friend of mine, actually my coworker, shared this link where these guys they build airplanes and they put these huge wheels on them so they can basically land them anywhere they want, and they go flying and they have these crazy adventures, and it's really cool to watch them. Like,
That's it. The freedom of flight. I think that's kind of the final frontier for us humans
that's right.
that we can need to do.
Absolutely. All right. Next question. What did you want to be when you were a child?
Huh. Anything but an entrepreneur, oddly enough. So what did I want to be? Oh, I wanted to be a computer programmer since I was a kid. I mean, I knew that I used to work on these old Apple II GSs. I'm dating
Nice.
myself a little bit,
Yeah.
back when floppy disks were actually floppy. That's when I started. And I always thought I wanted to be a full-time computer programmer and make computer games.
Beautiful. I love it. I love it. I didn't think I wanted to be a computer programmer till I was exposed to a computer at home. I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Well, that's it. And I mean, this is back in the 80s. The computers
Yeah,
had green screens and all that
exactly.
kind of stuff, but I thought it was really amazing. So,
Yep. Awesome. Next question. What is your favorite movie or TV show?
favorite movie. Oh, yeah, it's not a very good one. The Fifth Element. I
Oh
love
my
The Fifth
God.
Element.
That is my favorite movie
You're
too.
kidding.
I'm
I mean,
serious.
everybody's like, it's so awful. I'm like,
I've
I
seen
love
that.
that movie. I'm
I've seen
laughing.
that
It's
movie
action.
so
I
many
love it. I think it's great. So
I've seen
yeah,
that
Fifth
movie
Element.
so many times. Like, I can't even count it on my fingers. That's how many times I've seen the movie.
I have the opera scene like on my MP3 when she's
Yes.
singing. Like,
I
I
was
mean, I
just gonna
love that.
mention
It's
that.
amazing. It's amazing.
That's an awesome movie. And then that was like one of the first movies we get to, get introduced to Lilu, or what's her actual name? I can't remember. And then
I
now
can't
she's
remember.
like all over.
Mhm.
What's that movie series?
Resident Evil, isn't it?
Yes, Resident
Yeah.
Evil. She's like all
Mhm.
over that one.
Those movies are not that great. They're
Yeah.
like I don't think I've ever made it through an entire one, but that's fine. So,
They're modeled after a video game. You know,
exactly.
what are you gonna
And I
do?
did play the video game, but even so, I was
It's
not a
like,
big fan of the movies.
there's no storyline.
Yeah.
All right, next question. What movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
Hmm. Okay. I'll take the movies of Star Trek. Not the series, the
Yeah,
movies.
the movies.
Mainly the next generation area of it. Mainly because I love to explore.
And
So
what
nothing
character
to do
would
with
you
the
play?
actual fighting Borg and all that rest of the stuff. But in that world, their job is to check cool new places.
That's
How amazing is that? I'm like,
it is.
money doesn't exist, food gets replicated, your housing's taken care of. All you got to do is go to places nobody's gone before and just
Yep.
check it out. I'm like,
Yep.
that seems like an amazing world.
I
to
actually
live
have
in.
a poster on my wall that says Mars Explorers Wanted.
That's it. This is more than Mars. So I will go with any the Star Trek Next Generation movie, any of the movies, but in that
Awesome.
world.
Perfect. I love it, man. Who is your favorite superhero?
Ooh, these are right up my alley. Silver Surfer, same reason.
Oh my god, I call my car, it's Infinity G37. I call it the Silver Surfer because it's a silver car, and I used to drive for Lyft, and I'm like, welcome aboard the Silver Surfer.
That's it. But Silver Surfer's the same thing, right? He's a guy who can just travel around the galaxy. Not so much the backstory,
Yeah.
the tragedy and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, but just the whole idea of doing that, and almost infinite cosmic powers.
Yes.
Minus the whole, being after he gets free from Galactus. I'll add a little geek
Of course,
reference
yeah.
there. After that, not pre-Galactus.
A lot of parallels that I see here is I love those video games like Mass Effect 1, 2, 3,
I'm playing Andromeda
Andromeda,
right now. Honestly,
right?
literally, that's what I'm playing right now. Yeah.
It's so much fun because you're exploring, you're doing all this cool stuff. I'm
That's it.
like, oh my God. And then they introduced this new game called No Man's Sky, like came out like 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know if you got to play No Man's
I played it
Sky.
when it first came out, but they didn't have any features. So I was like, literally, there's nothing to do. So I
There,
was just kind of flying around space. I'm like,
yeah.
okay. Yeah.
And I think I went back into it like a few months ago and I was like, wow, they've changed a lot.
My
I
friend's
don't really
playing it
have
now. He's trying to get
time
me
to
in.
go
He says
play.
it's really good right now. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
like, but when I tried it when it started off, I'm like, it looks pretty.
And what's
But
cool is that they've also introduced a VR mode. So if you have a virtual reality
I
set,
do. I do.
you can pop it in and you can just fly all over. And it's pretty cool. They did a lot of work on it.
Yeah, my wife doesn't like when I spend that much time playing. I mean, I still sneak it in. Don't get me wrong, but not as much as I would like, and
Oh
more than
man,
she would like, I would say.
I totally get it. I'm waiting for this device to arrive. It's called the Feel 3 motion simulator. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, no.
It is a motion simulator where you sit inside this half dome, put your VR goggles on. It can rotate 360 degrees and it moves up and down.
Real
There's a
Player One. That's it.
Yes, Real Player One, exactly right. So, and they talk about flying, spacecraft and flying, fighter pilots or what do you call that? Jet fighters and
Mhm.
motorcycles driving motorcycles.
The simulator games, right? Yeah.
It's all the simulator games, and it's
Yeah.
so realistic. Like brings it to reality, and it also has these built-in vibrators that'll vibrate the entire chair, so you feel all the bumps. You gotta check it out, man. I
No,
think
well,
you're
there might
gonna.
be certain aspects. For example, my wife and I, we went to the Air and Space Museum there in DC, right? And they had an area where you can pretend to be
Yep,
flying in fighter jets, right? It literally lets you go upside down.
it
So
does.
I was flying, of course, and I went
Yeah,
upside down with my wife in the next seat. And after like 10 seconds, we're like, go back, because
go
you feel all
back.
the blood rush into your head. And you're like, that is actually a lot of work. So I
Yep,
can imagine that happening when I'm playing computer games,
it was
like
a
the old
ton.
Wing Commander games or something like that. I'd be upside down half the time.
Yep,
So,
yep. That is exactly what this enables you to do in the comfort of your own home.
well,
So
there you go.
this guy came up with the idea and he built this whole thing. It was a Kickstarter project. He probably raised 300 to $500,000. He's out of UK. He's working out of his. I mean, they had like right before COVID started, they had gotten this new workshop so they can do mass production, and then COVID happened. So
Oh, no.
we're still waiting on it, happily. So I've made the investment, just gotta wait for the thing to arrive, and then
It'll get there.
it'll get there. Awesome. I think I need to add another question about video
Fire away.
games. All right, last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
A board game. That's a much harder question. I used to play a lot of board games as a kid, and it was. Well, I don't know if this. I used to do a little D&D as a kid, but I don't know if I'd. Oh, well, that would be fun just because I don't know if you know the old Mech Warrior. There was a board game for Mech Warrior, and
Uh-huh.
just the idea of driving around in a 100-ton
Yeah,
robot is just kind of that'd just be really a lot of fun. So I'll go with the Mech Warrior board game.
awesome. I like it. Well, thank you so much, Ray Blackney, right?
Blakney.
Blakeney. Ray
Yeah.
Blakeney, thank you so much for your time. We had a ton of we had a ton of fun on this conversation, on this journey, learning about you, learning about all the cool things that you love to do, all the things that bring you joy and, you know, happiness to your life. Where can my audience find you?
Sure. So oddly enough, and I really need to get a better answer for this because like I'm not like famous and I don't want to be. So like there's not like this one. Don't follow me on Twitter. Don't follow me on Facebook. You'll be bored. If you want to get in touch with me, and I love talking to people about entrepreneurship and all the rest, I offer this to everybody. Very few people take me up on it. You can go to either livelingua.com, which is my primary business. If you go to the staff page, my email is right there. You can get in
Nice.
touch with it, or my new project, podcasthawk.com, which is a SaaS product to actually help you get interviews on podcasts on autopilot.
Ooh.
That's what I'm most involved in right now. So you can also go there. If you go to that contact page, within the next few months at least, and you hit contact us, that comes straight to me for now. I don't have
Nice.
staff there yet. So, and even if you do this in 6 months and I do have staff, they'll pass it on to me. So you'll get in touch with me that way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ray. This was a ton of fun. I definitely look forward to checking out Podcast Hawk.
Hawk, the animal. Yeah.
The Hawk, the animal.
Uh-huh.
It sounds like an amazing community or a software
It'll be
service.
a software. I mean, the basic, it'll be, you just put in, hey, I'm interested in appearing on business podcasts that have this number of episodes and this many reviews, or it'll have all these criteria.
That's so
You say
cool.
save, and then it starts emailing them, just 25, 50 emails a day, not a million emails, just with your pitch to everybody who's there.
That's so cool, man. I can't wait to check it out. And this episode will go out when it goes out. I mean, I've got a few backfilled, but this was a ton of fun talking to you and connecting with you on a totally different level.
Likewise. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Hacks and Hobbies. You can find additional information on the guest today on the website hacksandhobbies.com. Please feel free to subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out on upcoming interviews with amazing guests.